So there was this married woman who she was married, but she was in an open marriage. I'm pretty sure it was mutual on both sides. It seems like it was a pretty blatantly, like, openly open, if that makes sense, with both her and her husband. And they had been together for a long time, since like 96 or something like that. They had been married that long. And they had just barely moved back to Arkansas in 2017. I think Arkansas is where they first got married, and then they moved away for a while and came back. I'm not entirely sure, and I don't entirely care. But the point being is that she was a married woman and had no plans, absolutely none whatsoever, to get divorced. Ever, as far as I'm aware, at least. But we'll come back to that. Sorry. We'll come back to that point in a second. She had worked, so at the time that this situation I need to explain, at the time that this all kicked off, she was working, I don't know if it was minimum wage or what, I don't know, but she worked at a motorcycle shop. I don't know if she was like, she must have just been like she worked in the retail side of the store, not the maintenance side of the store. But it was kind of like a weird motorcycle shop. It's called Pig Trails, I think. And it was kind of like a weird motorcycle maintenance shop. Because it was kind of a combination maintenance shop. It's a motorcycle parts store with a maintenance shop in it. And they also sell motorcycles. And then they also have a merch shop. Or like a gift, kind of like a gift store, gift shop, whatever. But the actual unique part of this motorcycle shop was that it had billiards and a bar there. And so that's where this married woman worked. And while she was at work one day, purely by coincidence, not coincidence, purely by accident, as in no one invited her, no one actually informed her, no one, like, it was none of her business to be inserting herself into our family like that. But, okay, so, she purely by accident, purely by being nosy, overhears that a acquaintance of hers, or who was the brother of one of her coworkers, happened to have been in a brutal motorcycle accident and was in critical condition in the hospital. She was never invited to the hospital. She was never actually called or informed by any of the family members because she was barely an acquaintance of him. She's married, first of all. Second of all, like, she wasn't invited. She just showed her ass up. She quit work like pretty much that day. Okay, not that day. She showed up like one or two more times to work. But basically her full-time job was scamming my dad after that. After accidentally overhearing the phone call that my dad's stepsister had gotten because they were co-workers. And they were both working that day. She accidentally overhears the conversation of the person who was actually informed, the person whose business it actually was to know, and just invited herself to come and participate and be a part of his life. And he was in a medically induced coma with severe brain injury at the time. And she started calling herself his girlfriend while he was unconscious. And as he became conscious, for anyone who's never experienced knowing someone or going through it, anything like a medically induced, wait, was it? I don't know how induced the coma was. Okay, the point being is, anyone who has a coma associated with a brain injury, waking up isn't just like waking up in the morning, after sleeping all night. It's like a really long process typically. Especially for this level of severity that my dad had. Like, he had some serious amnesia, and at first he had a lot of aphasia related issues, which is like specific types of trouble with speaking or communicating more like. But so it was a long process. Like, I don't know if he ever even learned how to read a clock again in the entire year since the crash. I think by the end he probably could figure out things like that. Because he did recover some, like, considering his condition, he recovered a lot, actually. Like, it was kind of surprising he was still alive, but he was that kind of person that wasn't too unusual for him to hear. But, so as he was waking up gradually and people started, well, I'm not sure how it's a little complicated to figure out exactly what people could tell about the level of his disability at what point in time, because first of all, we didn't end up figuring out he definitely had amnesia. He had chunks of his memory, long-term memory, that were just wiped out for at least most of the time. I mean, I've looked into how amnesia from traumatic brain injuries works, and apparently, like, it's still there, but you're kind of destroyed, like, the connections to those memories, and so you can access it when it's specifically triggered, but you don't have control over when it's accessed. Something like that. I don't know, but he didn't remember how many kids he had, or what his kids' names were, for one, so that's pretty major. He would always forget what his house was, what his address was, what properties he owned, and things like that. And so, certain types of people will see money signs or dollar signs, when they hear that, or when they figure that out. So again, I'm not sure if it's entirely clear exactly when those types of vulnerabilities were specifically, like, totally verified. There's kind of like a 1 to 2 month range where that may have happened. But within that 1 to 2 month range, guess what happened? Apparently he proposed to the married woman. So, and this married woman, who was never invited in the first place to this hospital room, who actually, according to my sister's version of events, she was actually there in person, she just started calling herself his fiance, and then when my sister approached her about it, she just kind of laughed it off and said, oh, whatever makes him happy, you know what I mean? Like, because he's mentally incompetent. So she was the married woman was trying to play it off as though the poor guy was just so confused he called her his fiance on accident, and she just was like, oh, well, what's the harm in not correcting him? But later she would go on to develop her story into, no, he proposed to me and we were going to get married, even though she never filed for divorce until months after his death, and even a month after we filed our lawsuit against her for, as you can imagine, a list of activities.